Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Soup. My name is Reuben, joined here today with no one, and I am back to review Pluribus, episode 7. The Gap. Good episode. Well, before I get into that, I want to apologize for the sound of my voice. I'm a little under the weather. I've got the suds, the December sniffles, so bear with me. And if you can't stand the sound of my nasally voice, just, play the video on mute, so at least we get the view, right? And maybe click a couple of ads. You need some tires? You want to learn how to make $10,000 by working? Just kidding. Before I get into the episode, I want to let you guys know that you can listen to this wherever you get your podcasts. And go ahead and follow us on social medias at Nerd Soup, at Beau Soup, at Nerd Soup Monkey. Yeah, give him a follow. Why not? And go ahead and check out our Patreon page. We recently released a podcast about the best video games of the 21st century. And I'm also doing a solo series where I'm reviewing each episode of the new Ken Burns documentary, The American Revolution. So far, I've done the first 3. Looking forward to doing the last 3 as well. Really good doc. If you're American, I feel like it's essential viewing. If you're not American, you can learn something about why we're so propagandized. So, episode 7, The Gap. I feel like this is an episode that's going to frustrate a lot of people with its pacing because it only focuses on Carol and Manus. And essentially they're doing the same thing. Their journeys in this episode are similar. I think it's safe to say that both characters in this episode, based on their actions, are suicidal for different reasons. I think for Carol, you see the moment when she's lighting the fireworks and one of them falls over and it looks like she's going to be in the line of fire, and it just destroys the house instead, that she's going a little crazy. She's going a little stir crazy. That clearly she wants those moments of human connection, but she doesn't have anybody to share them with. So when she goes out to dinner, when she's teeing off the golf balls, when she goes to the country club, all of these little events that she is trying to, it reminds me a lot of Will Smith in I Am Legend, when he's walking through the town and he's got all the billboards of people, all the cutouts. It's not quite the same. And for Manus, it's almost a suicidal stubbornness where he refuses to take any assistance from the hive, that he's going to take on this journey by himself. And I'm always so impressed by the way that Vince Gilligan is able to flesh out his characters with these little details that tell you so much about who they are. We've seen it a few times with Manus now. Him leaving a $100 bill on the cars that he takes the gas from. Totally ridiculous, but it just speaks to the honor of that character and the rigidness of his ideals, that he's not willing to bend. He might break, but he's not going to bend his rules. And we do see him at the end when he falls into the chunga palm tree that they tell him about. The spikes can be 6 inches long. And man, that moment was that was brutal, dude. When he's trying to fucking grab the leaves and keep his balance and he falls back on it. It was just disgusting. But his whole journey, and based on the title of the episode, I was wondering if he would have to go through the Darien Gap. But even before that point, when he's driving through all the towns, when he's driving through Ecuador and the different South American towns, and he sees the people that are being controlled by the hive, and they're still acting friendly, they still want to help him, and he refuses. I love the little detail of him listening to the tapes so that he can try and learn English. There's so many details that speak to the character, and that he is someone, if he breaks something, he's not going to go to Best Buy and buy a new one. If he breaks the toaster, he's going to do everything in his power to fix it. He's very self-sufficient. He's very proud of that fact as well. You just get so much backstory from these characters without ever going into the past. It's just all these details that inform you on who these characters were before this happened. So much of their personalities have carried over. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens when Manu and Carol meet for the first time, because we see the jump. It was 12 days after the event, after the joining. And then from when Manu passes out, it jumps all the way to 48 days. And that's where Carol finally breaks. And I've seen some debate on this. Was it the Hive manipulating Carol, or was it Carol who sort of did it to herself, and now the Hive is exploiting her loneliness? Because we see Zosha come back, Carol breaks down, they hug, they embrace. I don't know. It's interesting to think about. A lot of people want to paint the Hive as malicious and evil, and I guess based on what they want to do and what they've already done, I can understand that argument. But I think that we also have to not necessarily hold them responsible, but Carol's actions is what led her to be distanced from the Hive. Maybe they were justified based on the situation. You can argue that as well. But I think it's more complicated than just good guys, bad guys, villain, hero. But what's going to be interesting now, especially because the next episode is called Charm Offensive. If Manusos encounters Carol and sees that she doesn't want to save the world anymore because she's fallen in love with Zosha, and the idea of if they turn everybody back to their normal selves, will Zosha still love Carol? That's why I guess, you know what, you really can say the Hive is being manipulative, because they didn't send John Cena to meet Carol. They didn't send some random schmuck, it'd be like if they sent Barry Wise instead. Carol would be like, you know what, I'm totally fine. I'll just go crazy. I'll just blow myself up with fireworks. But I wonder now if Manu will, to where he thinks he's going to meet Carol, they're going to be on exactly the same page, then finds out she's fallen head over heels for Zosha. And essentially she's fallen in love with the Hive because she's come under their spell of manipulation. And that leaves Manu even more frustrated by the situation, even angrier than he already is, especially when they meet for the first time. I think that could be an interesting way to end this season, where both of them are kind of on separate paths now. Or Carol's more, teetering between keeping things as they are or, for lack of a better phrase, saving the world. And Carlos Manuel Vesga is so good as this character. I think, the three leads here that we have with Zosha, Carol, and Manu have been excellent. They just have incredible screen presence to where you could follow them around with the camera. I mean, Carolina Wydra is only in one scene this episode, and she kills it. Just that grin where there's so much on her face where you're wondering, is there an individual inside of there, or is this the Hive being manipulative? They're really fucking with me when it comes to that stuff. But Carlos Manuel Vesga, Vesga has been such a superstar in these moments, in these scenes, on his own. The Lone Ranger, tough and gruff exterior. We've talked about the rigid morals. There's just so much to that character, and he barely speaks, which is so impressive. Vince Gilligan has always been great at writing these three-dimensional characters and not necessarily learning about them through what they say, but more so what they do. He reminds me a lot of Nacho from Better Call Saul. Nacho, arguably the best character Vince Gilligan has ever written, but Manusos has been just excellent. And everything about his journey, going through the towns, experiencing the Hive, seeing the deserted cities and towns, everything that's been left behind. And I think it was particularly scary when he approaches the Darien Gap and he sees the toys and the blankets and all the items that people couldn't carry with them. The items of such personal importance that had to be left behind. And I think it speaks to the tragedy of being a refugee, when you have to make those choices where the material things that do mean a lot to you have to be left behind, because it's about your life. It's about making this arduous journey so that you could come out the other side clean and have a chance to live again. An absolutely terrific moment and speech when he's talking to the Hive, when the Hive is trying to talk him out of going through the Darien Gap, and he says, nothing on this planet belongs to you. You guys are thieves. So it's embracing that anti-colonial mindset. I think that's very prevalent throughout South America. Even though Manusos and Carol are different, I think what really separates them is their privilege, just based on, where they wound up when all this happened and what the characters have to go through. And for Manu, it is, refusing to embrace the Hive. Things could have been easier for him. But it's also, when they say you have a horse, you don't want to name the horse if you're someone who's constantly riding around on the horse, because the horse dies and then you're really sad and you have multiple horses throughout your life. I'm really thinking of Knight of the Seven Kingdoms because I'm reading it now. Manu is strategically refusing that help so that what happened to Carol doesn't happen to him. to where if he forms a relationship with one of these individuals and he comes to care about them or even love them, it's going to be very difficult for him to set things right. And I think that's the dilemma we are now seeing with Carol. I mean, everything about Zosha's character does speak to the manipulation of the Hive that they present to her, her dream woman. And I think it just makes the show more interesting. You know, it's a moral dilemma that Carol is going to encounter. And also to comment on the pacing, overall the pacing to me has been fine, especially for the story that they're telling. And I've complimented the visuals on every review we've done because it is the best looking show on TV this year, maybe of all time. And I'm just going to keep on saying that because it's shot like a movie, and it's also paced like a movie, to where if you watched these episodes in sequence, it would probably play like a 9-hour movie or close to it, because the episodes haven't been quite an hour in length. But still, that's the pacing that we're getting. It's not your typical, narrative television show where it's so driven by the plot, by dialogue, the ands and the buts. It's more so, of course the story's narrative is progressing in those traditional ways, but you also get an episode like this where it's slow, it's taking its time, it's building up, it's showing you things about the characters that aren't so obvious. Not to say that it's incredibly complicated and super subtle, but even a detail like the cars. Vince Gilligan loves his symbolism. So the symbolism of Carol driving around in a cop car where she is trying to be the sheriff, the morality of this situation. She's very upset. She's telling everybody that it's wrong. She's trying to fix it, even though nobody appointed her to that role. So she's riding around in a cop car. This episode, the car dies, and she has a selection of luxury vehicles, and she picks the one that says "just married" with the balloons. And typical Vince Gilligan. He really loves giving his characters personality through the cars that they're driving. The cars were a big thing in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and now in Pluribus. So when we see her embrace Zosha at the end, it's fitting that she's been riding around in a car that says "just married." So it shows the shift in her character. Whereas Manu gets rid of his car for a different reason. It's sort of doubling down on his rigidness, on his refusal for help. Just because this car means so much to me and it has this sentimental value doesn't mean I'm going to ask for your help to preserve it. So Manu is willing to pour gasoline over it, and it's a badass moment. I mean, we've seen it so many times, people standing in front of cars burning or exploding, but this might be the best one because of what it represents emotionally for that character. I'm sure it does hurt him to leave that car behind, and I'm sure it was very important to him, as the Hive says, because they have all the fucking memories. Still so creepy what they do. But he has that inner strength. He possesses the ability to let go, to move on. That he is, what are you willing to sacrifice to save the world? Now, it's much different between a car and a person, in Carol's case. But still, Manu shows that he's willing to sacrifice something that means a lot to him in order to maintain his honor and to continue on with his journey. And it is in contrast with Carol, not only with the vehicles, but just their actions in this episode, because Carol isn't willing to let go of some of those things from her past. The meals that they shared between her and Helen at different stages of their relationship. There's so much baggage to that character that I think the Hive is going to use, or has already been using, to manipulate her. And a lot of people have talked about the metaphor of conversion therapy. When you go to these conversion camps, like Carol had experienced as a teenager, what they'll do is, if you're not giving in to their instructions, they'll isolate you, or they'll give you a very difficult task that's hard to perform by yourself, so you have no choice but to ask for help. And you have no choice but to run back into the arms of those smiling faces. But that's what's really interesting about Zosha as well, because it could be the Hive adjusting to some of the criticisms and insults that Carol has made towards them, to where, the smiling faces were just like the counselors at the camp. So maybe there's an effort to make Zosha a bit more human. Still warm, still inviting, still pretending to love Carol, but also changing in a way that makes her more realistic, that makes it easier for Carol to look past the fact that she is not an individual, and that and they can play house together. They can play married couple. They can live forever in Albuquerque. the emotional state that Carol is in right now, that might be really appealing. This might be the lowest point that we've seen her at. I mean, without a doubt it is. Last episode, of course, we have the moment where she breaks down in the bathroom, but here is the full-blown mental breakdown where she can't help but throw her arms around Zosha. I think a lot of people enjoy the chemistry between the two actors, so it was a nice moment, but it also shows another level of darkness and manipulation that is happening here, to where you can't be so happy for Carol because you're so afraid of what's coming next. And as frustrated as people have been with her character, I imagine they're going to be even more frustrated if she turns her back on Manu and doesn't want to help him anymore. I thought the funniest moment of this episode is when she asks for the Gatorade. And when they dropped it on the floor, I was looking at it too thinking, it looks cold, but I don't know if it's ice cold. And she calls them back and she scolds them. She's being such a dick to them at that point, where she's no longer anxious about the message because she's being just as annoying as they're being. You know, she's trying to throw it back in their face a little bit. And she's been doing that a lot, but I thought that was maybe the funniest example of her just being a dick. Being like, yeah, it's cold, but it's not ice cold. I didn't say tepid. I didn't say lukewarm. Carol turning into a Karen in that moment, and a couple of moments throughout this season. I found that to be hysterical. But even though it starts as her enjoying all the luxuries that were left behind, and it is played a bit for laughs, we also see the Georgia O'Keeffe exhibit. Man, he really just loves Georgia O'Keeffe, Vince Gilligan. But as the episode goes on, you know, the way that she keeps singing songs to herself, that's why I relate so much to Carol. It's when you're so bored that you just go from hobby to hobby, activity to activity. You're just trying to occupy your mind. Your mind is going in so many different directions where you're doing an activity, but you also have a song stuck in your head. You know, she's singing Georgia by Ray Charles. She's singing Hot in Here by Nelly. All the different songs that were rattling around her brain. It's all so relatable. It's that relatable behavior when somebody is extremely lonely, but refuses to acknowledge that fact. They're just trying to occupy their time. They're trying to fill the space of that loneliness. And once again, contrasting the privilege between Carol and Manu, to where Carol is sort of trying to occupy her time, and it slowly devastates her emotionally. Manu ends up in the same place, where he's not only emotionally devastated, but physically exhausted, and he has to be saved at the end because he keeps refusing to ask for help. It's for, at least in his mind, a good reason. Once again, he has to go through this whole ordeal just to get to Albuquerque, and she's just there killing time. So similar, but different because of where they find themselves, because of their circumstances. Vince Gilligan has always done a great job, too, of using the name of his episodes as a double meaning, to where we see Manu going through the actual Darien Gap. It's also the gap in time between the 12 days and the 48. It perfectly captures why Carol would have that breakdown when you see what she was doing throughout her days and then realizing she's been doing this for another 36 days. It's like being told someone's going into solitary confinement and then the story jumping 6 months. That's a horrifying jump, and I think it's a very scary gap in time that the show doesn't account for, but we can put together the pieces of what was happening. And Vince Gilligan loves doing this too, where his characters get tunnel vision. They get obsessed with doing one thing, accomplishing one single goal, no matter how many steps it takes. So I think there's still room for, it's not necessarily Carol having a breakdown, but she's trying to manipulate the hive as well. That she knows she's going to have to get more answers from them, that she's going to have to cooperate to a certain extent to figure out how to fix the world. So it could be her acting, trying to manipulate the hive. Maybe it's a little bit of both. It's one of those things where you're trying to enact a plan, you're trying to play a role, but then you become that personality or that person you're supposedly playing for the world. And it also helps that I think Carol is experiencing a lot of these emotions that she may be playing up in the presence of Zosha, in the presence of the hive. But I don't know, that's going to be something to keep your eyes on. Knowing Vince Gilligan, the way that he likes to take these left turns, the way he plays with foreshadowing and plot twists, it's going to be really interesting to see how this season ends. You know, what's the cliffhanger going into season 2? What's the big, drastic decision that one of these characters makes that shocks the audience and leaves us with theories and speculation for the entire off-season? But yeah, that's where I'm going to leave this review of episode 7, Pluribus season 1 for now, because the meds are starting to wear off. Terrible combination right now of my body aching from working out and then also aching from being sick. Woo, so 1-2 punch. So I hope you guys like this video. Comment down below your theories, your thoughts on Pluribus episode 7, and make sure you come on back for our review of the penultimate episode, episode 8. Hopefully I'm still alive. I need a nice cold Gatorade. But I'm more cool blue, baby.